SINE. Thanks, Dashrath. SINE is technology business incubator hosted by IIT Bombay and provides start to scale support to startup innovators and entrepreneurs. We also support innovators and startups through different government grant schemes such as BIRAC DIG program, Neti Prayas, METI grants, IDEX, so on and so forth. Now about this Sign Power Hour series, we started this in the midst of pandemic and we have received overwhelming response for this Power Hour sessions. And under the Power Hour Biotech series, we have conducted so far various sessions from different domains of biology to address recent advances, startup opportunities, funding available for life sciences, agri-tech, food tech, medtech, healthcare, industrial biotechnology. So today we are going to cover one of the very important topic that is a regulatory framework for the medical devices. So we have invited Mr. Varun Trivedi today to address strategy for successful regulatory compliance for medical devices. I will briefly introduce SINE and then I'll hand over this session to Varun so that he can discuss with you. He can let you know about various strategies for the regulatory framework. So Varun is a biomedical engineer by degree who started his career as design engineer at Philip Healthcare. Varun has more than 12 years of experience in healthcare sectors and has worked with multiple early and mid-stage startups in setting up their ISO processes, taking the product to the CDSCOC and the other global registration processes. Varun is also an expert in building and implementing the quality management system and regulatory strategy for medical device. He has experience in implementing requirement for multiple medical device, in vitro devices, software as medical devices, where we have received a lot of questions. So Varun will be addressing that as well during the presentation. He is a certified lead auditor, Six Sigma Green Belt and project management with extensive knowledge and experience in audits and process improvements and project management. With this introduction, I welcome Varun you to this session, Sign Power Hour Biotech series, and I will request you to take this session forward. Just want to make one announcement here for the audience or participant who have uh, are attending these sessions, that we will take all the questions towards the end of the session. Attendees can put their questions in Q&A chat box and they can also raise their hand during Q&A so that we can unmute them and you can directly interact with Varun. So Varun, over to you.
Thank you so much, Pranita. Thank you so much for that introduction and then welcome everyone. Let me quickly share my screen so that we can get going. Pranita, can you see? Can you get a confirmation, please?
Sure. If you could make it full screen.
Yeah, you go.
Yeah, yes.
Thank you. So, medical device strategy for successful regulatory compliance, right? So when we talk about medical devices, regulatory becomes one of the key aspects, especially when we talk about going into different regions, including India, right? In today's session, the topic of regulatory in general is vast, right? Which many of you all might have already interacted with in one way or the other. In today's session, my agenda is to help you guys not know the textbook knowledge, but through my experience, what I have seen, what I have learned is what I would love to share with you guys, right? So I'll not go through it. I think Pranita helped me give that introduction. But in the past, I have worked with multiple products, starting from AI algorithms to active devices to in vitro diagnostic devices to mobile application to wearable devices, right? And typically, most of these companies were startups, which had literally nothing, and from where we built the processes and took the journey towards getting multiple regulatory approvals, including US FDA, European market and few other regions, right? So that's what I've been doing over the last 13 years. Started as a design engineer and then slowly moved towards the compliance side of things. So for today's agenda, what I have for you guys is some of the basics, and then while we are discussing the basics, I'll try to get into some key details that you may want to keep into consideration while developing your device, while running your organization related activities, right? What are those? We will look into that in today's session. So first thing that I want to I would like to point towards, right, is the definition of medical device and what is an in vitro diagnostic device, right? The definition is on the screen. Why did I even have this slide, right? Is many a time, and especially now with the whole, paradigm shift towards going into the AI side of things and a lot of AI algorithms that are coming up, right? It is very important for you guys to be aware whether your device is a medical device, a general medical device, or it's a in vitro diagnostic device, right? And why do we need to do that? Again, the reason is very simple. The regulatory requirements, the regulations for a general medical device versus in vitro diagnostic devices are different, right? So if you are not able to make that, if you're not able to understand that where you fit in, right, then the application of regulatory requirements will not be correct for you, right? So hence, it's important for you to understand medical devices, in vitro diagnostic devices, what are the differences, and especially if you are into the world of AI algorithms, you need to understand whether your software would fit in the regulatory requirements related to general medical devices or in vitro diagnostic devices, right? Another thing that I would like to highlight over here is many a times there are products which have accessories, right? I'll give you a couple of very basic examples of what accessories related to medical devices are. In ECGs, you have ECG electrodes. The ECG electrodes are accessories, right? In blood pressure monitoring system, you have BP cuff. BP cuffs are accessories, right? Accessories are basically any device which using which you allow the medical device to do its intended function, right? Those are called accessories. And in the whole regulatory gambit, accessory is also seen as a medical device, and all the regulatory requirements that might be applicable for that particular accessory is something that you need to kind of consider and make sure that your accessory complies to that as well, right? Going forward, quality and regulatory. What is a quality management system, right? For me, a quality management system, if I have to put in the most crude and the most straightforward way, is the backbone of your company, right? Why do I say it's the backbone of the company? Is it is where you define your procedures. It is where you are going to run your functions based on what you have defined, and it is based on which you are going to get your output. It is basically the output that you get from your quality management system, right? Is what you are going to use to get your regulatory approvals, right? Quality management system is inclined to a company, right? So you say that ISO 13485 is a quality management system standard, right? You say that a company is ISO certified. You never say a product is ISO certified, right? Wherein the regulatory requirements when we talk about is focused on the product, right? So you don't say, hey, my company is CE certified. No, you say your product is CE certified. Your product is FDA registered. Your product has CDSCO approvals, right? Wherein when you talk about ISO 13485, it's the company level, right? So you say, hey, my company so and so is an ISO certified company, right? They both are very tightly driven. They both are very tightly coupled to each other. Again, what I have seen is, as I said, if you have a strong quality management system, right, getting regulatory approval is just a byproduct of a strong quality management system, right? So for me, it is always a thing where the quality management system or the quality processes of a company and the regulatory framework are tightly coupled, and they're not something that you should see in isolation. Okay, ISO 13485, this is a topic on its own, right? But what I would like to share over here in this session is the key aspects, right? So what is ISO 13485? It's international standard, which is a derivative of 9001, which basically helps you to create a framework related to your internal processes, right? To develop medical devices. It's a process-based approach, right? Based on which you will define certain processes within your organization. Five key elements of ISO 13485 are related to the general quality management system requirements. How are you going to take care of your documents, records? How do you maintain your quality manual? Have you defined your quality manual? What is the scope of your quality management system? Is what you take care in general quality system requirements. Second is your management involvement, right? How is your management involved? Have you defined your quality policy, your commitment towards customer requirements, things like that. Resource management, when we say resource, we talk about human resource, infrastructure, and then work environment. All three, how are you taking care of these aspects based on the criticality of those aspects to your product development, right? Next is the beast, which is the design and development, where we start from right from planning of product to gathering requirements to implementing verification validation. Then we move towards defining framework for purchase related activity. From there we move towards production and post production activities, right? And finally improvements, which is a continual efforts where we talk about how are you going to take care of your field complaints, feedbacks, any issues and notification that you need to your regulatory bodies, any non-conformances, and then CAPAs, right? So this is what but you need to keep in mind at a very high level what ISO is all about, right? And as I said, it's a standard which is applicable to a company. So you never say my product is ISO 13485 certified. You always say my company is ISO 13485 certified, and everything that my company does is considering the framework of ISO 13485 that is applicable to my company's product or functioning, right? Why do you need ISO 13485, right? If I have to talk about few very important aspects of 13485, removes dependency on people. Remember, you're in the world, you're in the field of medical devices, right? That means you are impacting somebody's life directly or indirectly, depending on what kind of device you are making, right? So when you are doing that, you want to ensure that there is consistency in your output. You have control on what you are delivering to the end customer, right? May it be a lay customer, may it be a lay user, right? Or may it be a specialized doctor, right? So you don't want to have dependency on people, otherwise you kind of lose the consistency of the output. So it removes dependency on people. It reduces your overall time to obtain regulatory approvals, right? Gives you credibility. Your company gets good credibility if you are an ISO 13485 certified company, and helps you better manage your customers and investors expectations. Okay. Okay, so from there, let's go towards the regulatory domain, right? So many a times when I'm talking to people, right, they come and they question me, hey, Varun, I have ISO 13485, can I ship to so and so country? Hey, Varun, I have CE marked device, can I ship to so and so country? The answer to that is not a straightforward yes, right? Just having a 13485 or having a particular region clearance, right? Although the region might be a developed region, doesn't mean that you directly get entry to different countries, right? You need to take every country on its own, and you need to understand their regulatory requirements, right? Right from India, Europe, US, Health Canada, Canada, Mexico, Brazil, Singapore, Malaysia, whatever different countries you might have, right? You need to independently assess those countries' requirement, and you need to understand those requirement, and based on that, you need to then apply for the for the registration process or the approval process. Once you get that, only then you can actually sell in that country, right? So it's not correct to assume, it's not correct to say that, hey, if I have an ISO 13485, or hey, if I have a CE or an FDA approval for a product, I can safely ship all around the globe. That's not the right statement to make, right? So please keep in mind that every country has their own regulatory framework. It varies, on the stringentness that they might have, but nevertheless they do have it, and then you need to assess that and make sure that you follow those frameworks. Okay. Moving forward, so this slide is on the intended use definition, right? What is an intended use, right? Why am I even talking about intended use, right? When the whole session is about regulatory strategies and all, right? The intended use is, for me, the most important statement that you define for your product, right? Every word that goes in defining the intended use is going to be something that you can actually be legally accountable for, right? It is the intended use against which you define the classification of your product, based on which you get to know, hey, what is the regulatory pathway we need to follow, based on which what rigor you are going to see in terms of review, based on which what kind of validation you need to make, right? So intended use becomes the most important statement that you define for your product, right? It is the claim that you associate with the product, right? And then everything follows after that, right? So for me, it is very, very, very important that any company, any manufacturer, any developer, any company owner make sure that their intent use is very clearly defined and understood within the organization. It is not something that can vary from a person to person. It's not something that changes from a person to person. And the internet use is so important that if you get an approval, let's say for a particular product which has a particular intent use, and you tomorrow change the intent use, you need to get the entire product approved again, right? In countries especially like US and Europe, right? So make sure that you understand the importance of internet use. Even today, many a times when I when I talk to companies, or when I'm talking to folks who are developing devices, they are not clear about the whole aspect of intent use, right? And that's where I felt the need to share this with you guys, that please make sure that you have a good hold of what your intent use is, what your intent environment is, who are your intent population, who the device has been made for, the user, all of that, right? Because everything eventually is going to feed towards getting your product validated, which is one of the most important step before you can actually go towards commercialization. Okay. With this, let's talk about the Indian regulatory requirements, right? Even today, many people come and they ask me this question: Hey, Varun, does India even have a regulatory requirement for medical device? The answer is yes, right? To be very honest, over the last few years, Indian regulatory body CDSCO, right, has been very active. They have silently, gone leaps and bounds in the kind of things that they have developed, the kind of regulatory requirements that they have developed, the kind of portals that they have developed for us to make our regulatory submissions, right? In fact, India was, before US, India was the one which had a fully functional portal through which you do all your application online, right? So yes, guys, India has a very good regulatory framework, right? And in fact, from 1st May 2022, all Class A, Class B devices were mandatorily put under the registration regime. And by this year, by 1st October, sorry, and by this year, 1st October 2023, pretty much basically all the devices, Class C, Class D included, are going to be mandatorily put under the registration regime, right? So please be mindful of this, right? And make sure that you are aware of the requirements based on your product, right? What you need to do, what kind of registration pathway you need to follow, depends heavily on what kind of product you are making. Is it being made in India? You are importing it from outside? How is your overall product development strategy? A lot of that gets needs to be considered before you can develop your strategy, right? But at a high level, CDSCO is our medical device regulatory body. The approach that we take is basically where devices are pre-classified, right? And that list keeps changing, right? So there are devices which are classified on the kind of application, cardiology, pathology, AI device, I mean software devices, things like that. So they have like 16 different panels on which, based on the intended use of the device, the devices are classified A, B, C, D, right? And then based on that, you need to do your applications, right? If you do not find a particular device in that list, right, if you are not able to find exactly a match or a similar devices that have been pre-classified, then what you need to do is you need to look into the MDR 2017 document, right? It has set of rules. You need to read those rules, which are similar to what is there for European requirements, and then you need to identify what classification your product will fit into, right? So if you do not find the classification in the list of products that are pre-classified, then you look into MDR 2017 document, look into the rules that are defined, and then identify the rule which closely fits your product, and that's how you get your classification, right? Once the product is classified, you basically, using the online portal, you go through the entire registration process, right? The registration portal process, basically what it looks like for Class A, Class B devices, you need to do, you need to use MD3, MD4 for manufacturing license. So in India, we use the word manufacturing license, right? Manufacturing license is nothing but the approval that you get, the license that you seek for, and once you get an approval, you can do your commercial activity, right? So for you to do commercial activity in India, if the product is manufactured in India, right, then you need to apply for manufacturing license. If the product is manufactured outside India and you are importing it in India, then you need to apply for something called as import license, right? So please be aware of these things, because the requirement changes in a decent way between manufacturing license versus an versus an import license. There are a few additional requirements that gets added for an import license, right? But if you are a company which is located in India, and your manufacturing is happening in India, then manufacturing license is what you need to apply for. Companies which are into software, companies which are developing software, even they need to apply for manufacturing license, right? So many a times companies, they come to me which are purely into AI algorithms and stuff, and they're like, hey Varun, we are not doing any manufacturing, man. Why do we need to apply for manufacturing license? It's just the terminology, right? So like how you apply for C certificate or an 510K approval, or a PMA approval for FDA. Similarly, the term that we use in India is a manufacturing license, right? So irrespective of whether you have a physical device or it's a software device, you still need to apply for a manufacturing license, which is the approval from the Indian regulatory body that you get for you to then put your device into the market, right? Um, Class A, Class B devices are, as you know, as based on the risk-based approach. Class A, Class B devices are lower risk, so the kind of rigor that you go through is less, right? Class C, Class D devices are high-risk device. The kind of rigor that you go through is pretty high, right? So the step that the process that you need to follow, right, is basically it starts with you submitting all your technical documents, right, related to your product, related to your company. Few of the documents are related to the company, your quality management system, certificate ISO 13485. You submit all of that through the online portal. Once you submit through the online portal, the reviewer starts reviewing your documents. If he has any questions, he will ask you, right? Based on that, you need to reply, or you need to provide additional information. While the review is happening, in parallel, there will be an on-site manufacturing audit, right? So the auditors of CDSO will come to your site and they will do an on-site audit. Based on the on-site audit, they will prepare their report. That report gets submitted to either the state licensing authority or the central licensing authority based on the classification of your product. With the report and the online application and the queries that you have replied, finally, when all of this is approved, you get your manufacturing license, right? So keep this in mind. And the audit that happens from CDSO is not the same audit that you go through for your ISO 13485. So it's a very different, it's a very separate audit. Once you get your approval, the registration is applicable for 5 years. After 5 years, you need to do a renewal. You just need to pay a renewal fee, and then it gets extended, right? Once the audit is done, there can be surprise audits, right? So on paper, there are no follow-up audits, but there can be surprise audit based on CDSO's requirements. So they can come at your facility at any point in time, and they can actually do the audit even once you have got your approval of your license. Okay, as mentioned, from 1st October 2022, Class A, Class B devices have been put under the licensing regime, and from 1st October 2023, Class C, Class D devices will also fall under the licensing regime. Basically, from 1st October 2023, all devices which are medical device should have a manufacturing license for them to sell in India, or an import license for them to sell in India. So there is some, post registration, we had received some questions, and one of the question was, for me to sell in India, do I need to get regulatory approvals, or do I need to do some registration? I believe you got your answer over here. So the answer is yes, and then what you need to do is what I was just explaining you guys.
Uh, Varun, sorry to interject, Pranita here. Uh, can you just give us some example of Class A, Class B, Class C, and Class D device? And in case, let's say, any innovator is, have the prototype and they would like to start the registration, the first step, when how they have to identify, sites for the validation, or any guidance on that, if there is with the CDSO, if any guidance, could you just let
Yeah.
us know something about that as well?
Yeah. So Class A devices are very low risk device, right? Let me think of an example of a Class A device. And I'm not getting anything on top of my head. But basically, like, I would say something like the frame, the ear frame that you use, right? The glasses and the frame that comes with the, that holds the glasses. Those can be Class A. Class B are your typical ECG devices, BP devices. All those are Class B. Class C are glucometers for self-testing. Those are Class C. And Class D devices are life critical devices, right? Things like pacemakers and stuff would be Class D devices, right? So ABCD is linked with the risk or the criticality of the device associated with the function, right? Also, one more thing that you need to keep in mind is, as I was talking about the intended use, right? if you change your intended use, let's say for a software, right? I'll just give an example for software. Let's say I have developed an AI algorithm which basically does an analysis of images, and in the end, it gives a output which the doctor can use to treat the patient. Right now, if this is my intended use, that hey, I have a device which can analyze images and can give output which can be used by doctor to treat the patient, right? Then you will be, most probably in class C or class D device kind of a category, right? Because you are claiming that my output can be used for treatment, right? Wherein if you say that hey, my device is an AI algorithm which can look into images, and the output just acts as an aid for the doctor to take further decisions, right? Moment you dilute your claim and say, hey, it's just to aid the doctor, right? Then your classification falls towards more like class A or class B, right? So again, keep in mind that your intent use is something that can actually change the classification of your device, and then your overall strategy will also be impacted if the classification changes, right? Um, Pranita, what is the other question that you asked?
Uh, the question is like, let's say some innovator has completed their prototype, and then they would like to start the regulatory. What would be the first step where they
Yeah,
have to go
yeah,
registration and
great.
subsequent steps?
I'll answer that. Thank you for asking that question. So let's say I am someone who has my company, and I, started working on a product, right? The first thing that I would recommend you to do is first register your company with CDSCO, right? Again, everything is online. No, you don't have to go and meet any babus and stuff, right? I think pretty much gone are those days. Everything is online. You need to register your company, right? Once your company is registered, you will get access to the CDSCO's portal. It is through the portal you can apply for all different kind of licenses, right? Um, Keep one thing in mind: for you to apply for your manufacturing license, the first step, or I would say the prerequisite for the manufacturing license is an ISO 13485, right? So make sure that you have your ISO 13485 before you can even go towards your manufacturing license, right? So first you register your company with CDSCO. Once you are done with the registration, you will get access to the CDSCO's portal under your company's ID and your company's portfolio profile. From there, you can apply for different kind of licenses that you may need. You can apply for test license, you can apply for manufacturing license. When you apply for certain licenses, it's again all nicely crafted, where there will be a portal where you can submit documents. What you may want to keep in mind, as I said, your QMS document, I mean your QMS certificate, ISO 13485, and then based on your product, all your different design documents, right from the testing of the device, validation of the device, definition, your risk file, risk plan. If it's a software device, then cybersecurity report, everything that goes around the product, the kind of product that you may have, right? Everything that is needed as part of your design and development is something that you need to keep it ready, because that is what you will be submitting through the online portal to the reviewer for them to review and come back to you. Pranita, does that help?
Yes, yes, yes. Better. Yeah. Thanks.
Thanks. Move forward. Okay. Yeah, guys, one thing that I would really like to highlight over here, right? Over the last few years that I've seen, and this has been an issue, for many companies, is the selection of notified body, right? So CDSCO, by the way, has published list of companies, list of notified bodies that you can work with. These are the companies which are going to give you your IS 13485, right? And eventually even your CE certificate. My strong recommendation would be to please consider that list that CDSCO has. I have put that reference. Also keep in mind that list keeps changing, right? It keeps getting updated, right? My very strong recommendation to all of you all would be to please consider working with global notified bodies, right? Companies such as TUV Sud, Intertech, TUV Rhineland, BSI, DQS, right? Which are globally recognized notified bodies. They are recognized even by the European Union, right? And even they are recognized for third-party review in the US side as well, right? So the reason I say that is very simple, is because many a time if your notified body is not right, if you're working with some not a very good qualified notified bodies, then when you submit your when you submit your 13485 certificate to CDSCO, there are chances that they may reject it, right? So please avoid those risks. Not only that, even when you meet your customers, potential customers, especially if you're planning to tie up with big companies, right? They will look into all of these aspects as well. So my strong recommendation to all of you all would be to please work with notified bodies which are which are well known. As much as possible, work with the ones which are approved and listed by CDSCO. But for whatever reason, if that list is not something that you are very happy with, then at least work with one of them who is listed by the European body, right? So that way you assure that with whomsoever you are working are known notified body and not just some random company that you are working with, right? There are many such companies that you need to be aware of. I mean that you need to be aware, keep them away from you. Okay. Moving forward, so that was a summary on what to expect from CDSCO and what happens as CDSCO, right? Again, it's a topic that may take a lot of time if I have to go into the nitty-gritty, right? Again, keeping the whole timeline in mind, I wanted to kind of touch base upon in a way that can give you enough information for you to then take it forward, right? Let's go to the next key market, which is the CE marking, right? The European regulations, right? Similar to so first of all, uh, the whole CE regime have shifted from MDD to MDR. MDR and IVDR are the new regulations that you need to keep in mind, right? There were some dates associated by when companies need to be compliant to MDR and IVDR requirements. There has been a grace period which has been awarded, keeping the very limited number of notified bodies that were there, which were allowed to give you CE certificate. Because of the limitation of notified bodies, there has been some grace period over the transition of companies getting from MDD to MDR, right? New application needs to be all under MDR or IVDR. If you're a company which has a C certificate, you get a grace period. I think it has gone up to 2027 or 2028 that you can utilize that time to do the transition, and you don't have a hard deadline of 2021 2022 that was initially set, right? So if you're a company which already has a C certificate, use that in your advantage. But my strong recommendation to you would be that keep the MDR and IVDR requirements in mind and try to align to them as soon as possible so that again you avoid the last minute rush and things like that, right? The way the CE certification work is purely on rule based system, right? Where MDR has its own set of rules for general medical devices. IVDR has its own set of rules for in vitro diagnostic devices, right? Looking at the rules, you try to understand which is the rule that closely fits your device's intended use, right? Based on that, you will either be class 1, class 2A, class 2B, or class 3 for MDR, or ABCD, one of them for IVDR, right? Again, this is tied back to the first slide that I had about definition of medical device versus in vitro diagnostic device. This is exactly what I was talking about, right? Based on whether you are an in vitro diagnostic device or a medical device, right? General medical device, your requirements will vary. Your requirements will change. Your regulations will also change, right? What you need to comply to will also change, right? So again, please keep in mind to be very clear as to you understanding whether you are an MDR related product or an IVDR related product, right? Especially in the case of software, right? For software, again, depending whether you are an MDR or IVDR, the set of requirements are the same, right? Based on the intended use, you will first identify what is the classification. Based on the classification, then you get your regulatory pathway, and then you accordingly go around it, right? Um, for software, the European Union has actually done a very good job of coming up with specific rules dedicated towards software related activities, right? So before there were no rules which were defined keeping the software framework in mind, but now they have added few additional rules which are focused purely on software side of things, right? So that kind of helps us to get more clarity on how to get the product classification and move forward in the whole registration pathway, right? Few key requirements that you need to keep in mind. Keep in mind again, what you see on the slide is a generic list, right? Based on your product, this list will vary a lot, right? But what you see is the generic requirement, which again starts from intended use, device classification, having a QMS certification. I mean, having a QMS framework, which is in line with ISO 13485. to maintain all your design documents, emphasis on usability, cybersecurity. If you are a if you have any mode of communication, right, or if you're a software product, right, you need to ensure that your cybersecurity related aspects are being taken care of. Your product testing, guys, please be very vigilant about your product testing, right? Many a times, founders get too excited about their product, and I understand, they're very emotional because they have spent so much time in making the product and they completely ignore the entire compliance side of things, right? And then what happens is, and I've seen this so many times, that when we go towards getting regulatory compliances, and when we talk about regulatory compliances, product testing becomes one key mandatory activity. And when we do the product testing, we find out that, hey, our product was never designed and made for the requirements that have been defined in the regulatory standards, right? And guess what happens? We need to redesign the whole device, right? I have myself faced such issues, right, with companies that I've worked in the past, where because we were not vigilant enough to understand the regulatory product side requirements, we did not do our design work properly, and we burnt not our finger but our entire hand towards going towards redesigning the whole product, right? So please take this advice and ensure that you have very good grip over your the regulatory requirements. Start, if you're an active device, start with basics of EMI, EMC, general safety, things like isolation, thing like if you're into ECG, there is the need for the what do you call the defib protections and things like that, right? If you fall under diagnostic ECGs, right? So please keep these things in mind and ensure that you have some level of understanding during the stage of designing itself, right? I'm not even talking about prototype and post prototype and all. As early as possible, have a good grip on your product requirements so that you don't have to go through the whole cycle again, right? UDI, clinical evaluation report, cybersecurity is becoming very big. Cybersecurity and human factor studies, usability is becoming very, very big, especially in the European and the US side of region. It is not still something that we are talking too much in the Indian regulatory framework, but I foresee that happening very fast, right? So again, my recommendation would be for you to have your grip on usability and cybersecurity. At least be aware that what is needed, what you need to do, and when the product is ready, when it is mature to the level where you have completed your validation and the design is frozen, you can immediately go towards these kind of steps in activity, right? There are still so many simple steps that you can do as part of your QMS that will still help you to gain compliances faster, right? Very simple steps, right? As simple as maintaining some documents and stuff, right? So be aware of those things and try to be in alignment to those requirements, such that again your when you go towards your regulatory certifications for countries like US and Europe, you have already taken care of a lot of those aspects, right? um, Appointment of notified body, we spoke about that, right? So in Europe, for the CE marking, there are limited number of companies which are allowed to give you CE certificate. Please be aware of those lists, and you can only work with those lists. There are many companies which make false claims on giving you CE certificate. Please be very careful with those companies, right? So those are the things you should be kind of aware of from a long run perspective. Otherwise, it will be impactful for you, right? Getting an SRN registration and appointment of a legal rep are things that you need to keep in mind when you talk about the overall CE framework for a European side of things, right? Another thing I would like to highlight is the clinical aspects, right? So what has happened is, in the new requirements, the MDR and IVDR, the requirements of showing clinical data has become very important, right? Either you show it through clinical studies, or you show it through substantial equivalent studies, right? Is up to you, but you need to show clinical data, right? For your device or for your technology. Again, that is something you need to have good grip on, because the requirement for evaluating and demonstrating clinical equivalence in clinical data is very heavily demanded in the MDR. So when you will submit your file, you will see a lot of questions coming on those aspects, right? Somebody had questioned me in our registration forum that, hey, how to get CE certificate for India? There is no CE certificate for India, right? There is no CE certificate for any country other than Europe, right? So not right for you to say CE certificate for India. For India, you need to get CDSC registration and get a manufacturing license, right? CE certificate is only for Europe, right? You apply for CE certificate only for Europe, right? So just wanted to kind of clarify that point. Okay, moving forward, these are some of the links that you need to keep in mind. Uh, uh, List of companies which are allowed to give you C certificate, right? So that's pretty much what I have highlighted over here, and this is again tied to the slide that I was talking to about when we were discussing about the CDSCO side of things, right? When we were discussing about the India side of things, right? That please ensure that the notified body that you are working with is someone globally acclaimed, right? Such that otherwise, what will happen is if they are not approved by the European side of things, then you need to have multiple notified bodies, one for India, one for Europe, and then you need to go through multiple audits. Your cost will go high, your time will go high, your overall operation expenditure will go high. You want to avoid that, right? So be efficient, and one simple way you can be efficient is to work with someone who is recognized in pretty much all different geographies. Okay, so that's a quick summary on what you expect from the European side of things. um, let's look into FDA. The way FDA works is very different, right? So FDA does not have this framework of a rule-based system. What FDA does is they say, hey, you know what? We are closely watching and monitoring all the devices that are coming in US. So we are looking at that. We are going to predefine all the devices, right? And that's what even India is trying to do. Predefine based on the intended use, the classification of the product, right? FDA does not work on a four-tier classification. They work on three-tier classification: class one, class two, class three, right? They do not have bifurcation of IVD versus general medical devices. So everything falls under medical devices, and then they have very precisely segregated based on type of medical device and based on the medical device itself, right? All the different classification. You need to make sure that you are aware of your product again based on the intent use. Identify the right classification, right product code, right regulation number, and based on that, whatever requirements that might be defined by by FDA, you need to follow that, right? The typical application or the typical pathway towards getting an FDA approval can be one of the following. If you're a class one device, which is a low risk device, you just need to do a device registration and move forward, right? So as simple as a device registration through the FDA's online portal, you pay a fee and you can start selling in the US. If you are a class two device, then you need to do a 510K application, 510K approval process, which is heavily driven by substantial equivalency study, right? Which says that, hey, for me to get a 510K, there is already a product which is class two, which is in US. You guys have approved it. I am similar to this product. See, I have done everything that the product has done. You submit your design files, design documents, substantial equivalency data, and you get your approval on that, right? Then comes the class three devices, which require pre-market approval, PMAs, right? Those are the ones which are very critical, and the ones which may demand more of clinical data from you, right? Again, it works on the principle of substantial equivalency, but being high risk device, right? The scrutiny is going to be much more higher. The fourth type of devices are the ones which are not there in US, right? So if there is a product which you have developed which is truly novel in the way that no other company in the world has developed that product, then you fall in the gambit called de novo, right? So that means there is no product in the US which is similar to yours. So it will be by default classified as class three. Then you go back to FDA, you reason out with them, you explain them why it should not be class three and why it should be class two or class one. If they accept your justification, they will assign the appropriate classification. If not, then by default you will be classified as class three if you are de novo, right? If you don't have any predicate for your product in that market in the US, then you by default are seen as a de novo product, and you by default are given a class three risk classification, and then you basically have to go through the whole de novo process, right? Okay. Few things that kind of greatly vary between the way FDA does their review versus Europe and versus few other countries is they put a lot of emphasis on the statistical side of things, right? So if you have done clinical studies and stuff, they will look into your sample size. How have you done your sample size and things like that, right? If you are into the AI side of the world, right, they want to really understand how have you defined your AI framework, and how do you manage your training and testing data sets? How have you ensured the configuration management for training and testing data set is appropriately defined? And then again, if you're into software, they want to understand your overall cybersecurity plan strategy. Have you done any evaluation, and have you found any bugs which were taken care of, kind of thing, right? So that's the typical difference. And another major difference is from an FDA kind of approval processes. When you talk about usability studies, right? If usability study is applicable for you, and then you need to do usability studies, then it's they enforce that the usability studies need to happen in the US, right? So you need to ensure that your product undergoes a usability study in the US with US population, because their thought process is that when you do usability study, you need to also take care into consideration the behavioral aspect of people, right? That's another thing that you may want to kind of keep in mind if you have a product which has a UI, if it is a software based product, or if you have a product which has has a physical form that can be touch and felt upon. So usability studies is something again that I would like to highlight to all of you all to keep in mind, right? Um, what you see on screen is again a typical list of requirements from a 510K application perspective, right? A lot of it, if you see and if you realize that a lot of the requirements that are listed down over here are kind of in line with even the European requirement. What it again says that is the statement that I made, right? If you have a strong quality management system, right? What all you see on screen, the design documents, the biocompatibility, the labeling, the shelf life, if applicable, sterilization, if applicable, device lifetime, software, electromagnetic compatibility, all of that is also tied to your QMS. If you have a stronger QMS, all of this is just going to be a byproduct of it. And if it is going to be a byproduct of a strong QMS, getting regulatory approval will again be simpler, right? So again, I would like to reiterate what I was talking to you in the beginning of the presentation, that emphasize on having a strong QMS. All of this will be taken care of. The regulatory requirement will just come by. Okay. Some of the regulations and guidance that you need to keep in mind, right? A good reference for you to, if you're doing different activities, you should look into. These are focused mainly on the US side of things, right? But if, let's say, you want to manage your electronic records, right? If you're using everything electronic records, and if India doesn't have anything specifically highlighted for how to manage electronic records, 21 CFR Part 11 is a very good document that you should look into to kind of learn from, and then accordingly develop your requirements around it, right? So some of them, this is again not a complete list. The list is pretty huge. So what I've done is, kind of highlighted some of the key common requirements that that might cover most of the companies, right? And something that you guys should have handy and kind of in front of you. But again, based on the product, based on the kind of work that you guys are doing, some of this might be applicable, might not be applicable. Some other requirements might be applicable. Just keep that also in mind. Okay. Similarly, some of the ISO and IEC standards that you should keep in mind. Again, this is not a complete list. This is a very brief list which covers a lot of key requirements, right? From ISO 13485, 14971 for the risk management, IEC 60601 for any active medical devices which uses some sort of energy, right? Either it is a double A battery or a high voltage power source. Doesn't matter if it's an active device, you need to go through IEC 60601-1, right? 60601-1 is a very important standard. It actually doesn't only emphasize on electrical safety, it emphasizes on mechanical safety, it emphasizes on temperature, it emphasizes on a lot of other aspects, right? It also emphasizes on if your device is a wearable device, right? Especially for folks who are into the wearable side of the world, please consider this, right? There are tests like impact test, there are tests like drop test, and if you fail those tests, you cannot get clearances. You cannot get you cannot get your device certified against this standard. If you cannot get your device certified against this standard, you cannot go for any regulatory approvals, right? So please ensure that 60601-1, 60601-1-2 for EMI/EMC is something that you are in grip of moment you are in active devices, moment you are in the gambit of active devices, right? um, Many a times companies come to me, folks comes to me, and they kind of talk to me saying that, hey Varun, we are using battery, it's a certified battery, so we should not have any problem, right? Yes, theoretically you should not, but again, I have seen where certified batteries have exploded, right? Certified batteries do not actually meet their own requirements, right? They all came from China through one way or the other, and when they were subjected to to 60601-1 requirements, they did not meet those requirements. So again, do not just use a supplier's claim as the ground truth, right? The certification body is going to do independent evaluation. They will do your testing, and these testings are pretty intensive testing where your, as I said, the batteries and things like that, it can actually lead into a destructive testing, right? So please make sure that you are aware of these requirements based on your product, and you have taken care of or you have at least trying to take care of uh, the requirements at your design stage itself. Similarly, few others that you should keep in mind: 62304, if you are having any kind of software, even if it is AI or if it is a mobile application, web application, doesn't matter. Moment it's a software, 62304 is something that you should keep in mind, and all your processes should be defined and you should be following and adhering them, right? And 62366 is for usability, and 10193 is for biocompatibility, right? Apart from these, there are many specific product specific standards as well, right? So for example, there is an IEC 60601-2-25, 60601-2-47 for diagnostic ECG and ambulatory ECG, right? Similarly, there are standard for BP, there are standard for glucose monitoring system, there are standard for digital thermometers, right? So different product might have different standards that you need to look into depending on what your product is, right? So again, do not consider this list as a final list. This is just a very generic list for a lot of common products that I've worked with. But you need to kind of keep your product in mind, and then also try and to do a much more detailed, thorough analysis based on your product as to what are the different additional standard that you need to think about, right? There are standards for sterilization as well, if sterilization is applicable for you guys, right? Under biocompatibility, there are I think 15 or 20 different substandards depending on what kind of application you have. Those specific biocompatibility related standards will be applicable for you guys, right? So please keep that in mind when you are again considering your overall quality and regulatory strategies. Okay. Software as a medical device. I saw a few questions coming on SAMD, AI, things like that, right? So let me try and share what I've learned so far, and I hope it helps you guys in one way or the other, right? So moment you say software, moment you say SAMD, moment you say software as a medical device, moment you say, hey, I am a mobile application guy, or I am a AI guy, or I am a web application guy, right? Moment you talk about any of those things, the first thing that I'll say is please make sure that you have 62304 compliance in place, right? 62304 again is not a standard against which you get certified. Okay, certification is only for ISO 13485. These are all supporting standards, right? These are the standards that you will consider: 62304, 14971, 62366, right? So if any companies come to you and say, hey, we will give you a 62304 certificate, that is all not correct, right? It is not a certifiable standard, right? It is something that you have to select and adhere to based on your product, right? The only certifiable standard is ISO 13485 for the company, and then IEC related other standards for your product, right? So 62304 is not a certifiable standard, right? It is a standard that you will use moment you have software involved. It is a standard which will help you to understand based on the criticality of the software, right? What do you mean by criticality of the software? Is, let's say there is a software which is only doing data management versus a software which is actually predicting the end output, right? And actually giving doctors input for them to take decision, right? The criticality of the software differs, and based on the criticality of the software, right, the requirements from the standard also differs, right? What kind of process you need to have, what kind of rigor you need to keep in place, right? All of that kind of differs. So keep that in mind. 62304 is the standard which will help you to develop that framework, which will help you to develop those processes, and then you need to kind of make sure that you adhere to those processes, right? Typical processes, there are four key processes that 62304 talks about: software development process, software maintenance process, configuration management process, problem resolution process, right? What is problem resolution process? Your bug management. How will you take care of your bug? How do you manage your bug? How do you define criticality to the bug? Things like that. Configuration management is how do you take care of your version controls? How have you defined your different branches? Dev branch, production branch, staging branch, all of that, right? How have you defined your overall configuration scheme for your software? Maintenance is basically how you take feedback, customer complaint, and you make changes in a controlled manner to your software. And then development is just the initial development that you do, right? So very important for you guys. Again, it doesn't matter whether you are an AI company, or you are a some other kind of a software company, 62304 is currently 62304 is applicable for all and any kind of software, right? Another thing you should keep in mind from a CDSCO perspective is CDSCO has a separate product panel called software, under which they have defined, I think, around 60 different software types with their intended use, which you should look into. And if you know if your product falls in one of those intended use category, then that's the classification you should adopt, right? So with time, this topic of whole software is going to be much more rigorful, but for now, the standard that any SAMD company should keep in mind is 6304, right? Now, talking about AI, right? Specifically about AI, there are a few things that you want to keep in mind. There is one very good two-page document called Good Machine Learning Practices that was developed by US FDA and Health Canada. I would strongly recommend you guys to kind of have a look into that document. It has 10 different pointers, right? What you see on screen is basically extract from those pointers as well, right? So for an AI perspective, guys, what you need to keep in mind and make sure that you follow is, make sure that you have proper control on your training and testing data set. Make sure that they are properly isolated from each other. Make sure you have good configuration management defined for those data sets, right? Make sure your cybersecurity practices are very well defined. Make sure your cohort definition is in line with the intended use that you have defined, right? These are the few things that you kind of need to ensure as part of your processes itself, right? And these are the few things that you will ensure when and make sure that it is in alignment to the overall 62304 requirement as well, right? So please ensure that you have grip on your overall AI development processes from day one. Many times what happen is, when I'm talking to company, the product is already ready. They are kind of in the verge of going to the market, but they don't have all these processes, that they have defined and they're trying to follow, right? And then again, from a process perspective, everything starts from day one. And we need to do a lot of retrospective work, right? So even if you do small basic things, hygiene factor from the get go, then again it helps you to get your overall compliances faster. Okay. um SAMD, software as a medical device, some example versus what do you call software as not a medical device? And there was one of the companies which had asked me this question. I forgot the name of the company, which was basically they were asking that, hey Varun, we get data from multiple devices and then we share that data with doctor, and then doctor uses, and something about that, right? I don't remember exactly what the overall function was. And then they were asking, do we need to go through registration process and all, right? So again, to this person who ever asked this question, I need to first understand your intent use, right? So there are many digital therapeutic company, right? So you would have heard about this Healthify Me and Fitterfly and few other companies which have come up with these applications, right? Mobile application wherein you feed in your glucose data, which gets to a doctor, and then doctor recommends a program, and then through the mobile application helps you to run the program, right? And as far as you do the adherence to the program, end of the day your diabetes comes in control, or it reduces, or things like that, right? Whatever the claim the company might be making, right? Now if it is something of this nature, right, then you fall in the gambit of what we call it as digital therapeutics, right? And moment you fall in the gambit of digital therapeutics, then you definitely are a medical device, and you need to follow the same thing that we were discussing over the last some time. But if you are only purely a data management tool, right, where I'm taking data from here and putting it over there without adding any intelligence, without doing any data processing and things like that, right, then you might not even fall into the gambit of medical device, right? So again, it is very important for you to be clear as to what you are doing, and more than your regulatory expert in-house or a consultant or whosoever you might be working with, that person needs to be very clear as to what is your claim, what is your intended purpose. Based on that, everything else will follow, right? So please keep in mind as to what your intended function might be for your device. Based on that, your overall regulatory strategy will be developed. Okay, I'll move forward. Based on what I have learned so far, working with multiple companies, what I would like to recommend to most of you all, to pretty much all of you all who are having their own company or working with medical device organization, is uh, start early as soon as possible, right? Don't wait for your product to get mature. but don't do a start-stop approach, right? If you start early, that's good. I understand startups have issues related to funding and all. So even if you start slow, it's okay, but start as early as possible and don't try to, do things at the later stage when it comes to compliances and QMS and all of that, because at a later stage it becomes very difficult for you to do things retrospectively, right? It will be good for you to kind of keep that in mind and see how you can better plan it, right? Have a preset target. Always try to develop your QMS keeping something in mind. Maybe an ISO 13485 or a 21 CFR Part 820, whatever you might feel is good for you, is something that you should aim for and then develop your processes around it, right? Be clear of your intended use of the product. I think I spoke a lot about this, so I won't repeat again. Define your quality and regulatory strategy, right? What is all of that? What we said, the first 3 point kind of linked with the fourth one, right? You want to be clear as to what your strategy is all about. You want to be clear what is your intent use. You want to be clear what is your predicate. You want to be clear what is your classification. What are your claims? How are you going to go about with your validation strategy? All of that is something that you need to be very clear on from day one, rather than getting around it at a later stage. Um, Maintain documents. Start having a habit of maintaining your process and documents. Even if it is in a notebook, try to gather that record, maintain that record so that you don't have to do a lot of retrospective work. um, Give emphasis to cybersecurity and usability studies as early as possible and as soon as possible, kind of thing. There are multiple ways in which a QMS can be implemented, right? Please identify the way that best suits you and then follow that path, right? Different people will have different perspective. Different people will have different approaches, right? There is no one set way in which you can get compliance, right? The best way is the way that is in line with your organization's vision, right? That's the best way that you will feel. So but hold on to that one way and then keep moving forward. Okay. Yeah. So some of the typical question that I get, right, versus some of the myth that I have kind of faced. Can I change my intended use? Yes, you can, but keep in mind that intended use is very important statement. Once you get an approval on a product and you change your intended use, it can very well mean that you need to get an approval again, right? It can very well mean that you need to go through your validations again, right? So a change in a change in intended use is doable, but it has its own impact, right? Does my outsourced manufacturer need to be an ISO certified? Absolutely not, right? It's not a mandate. It's not a mandate that you need to work with an ISO certified suppliers only, right? Absolutely not a mandate, right? Does FDA recognize ISO 13485? Formally, no, they do not. There are a lot of similarities between ISO 13485 and 21 CFR Part 820. FDA has its own code of for regulations, which is called 21 CFR Part 820, which is again similar to 13485. I wouldn't use the word same. I would say similar, right? A lot of aspects are similar to what is there in 13485, but again, FDA does not formally recognize 13485, not yet. Cost and timeline for ISO. I think somebody asked this question during the registration process as well. It heavily depends on the type of product you have, right? So it is very difficult for me to give you a number. I need to understand a lot more details about your product before I can even come to some sort of an estimations, right? Can I apply for my product under class 2A in Europe? Many companies come and say, hey, you know what? I want to apply for class 2A. I want to apply for class 2B. I want to apply for class 1. That's not how it works, right? You need to know your intent use, and based on your intent use, your classification will be defined, right? So it's not that I can go and pick and choose to what classification I may want to apply the product for that particular geography, right? That's not how it works, right? Some typical myth: all clinical studies must be conducted in the US or the country where you intend to sell the product. That's not correct, right? You can do your clinical studies in India, and if they are in line with what you intend to sell in the US, you can use the same studies, not an issue. Every medical device needs to undergo clinical study, not really true. Many devices can show performance equivalency. Many devices can show substantial equivalency. Many devices can show bench testing, like especially in case of, let's say, ECGs, right? So there are a lot of databases which are clinical grade databases that you can use to show the performance of your algorithm, right? ECG algorithm, and you don't have to necessarily do a clinical study, right? But this is again For in US, the one good thing is you can always have these pre-submission meetings where you can get the early inputs, right? Or if you're taking a path of 510K, you can always look into your predicates and see what they have done. But again, saying that it is a must is not the correct thing to do. Um, FDA submissions cannot be done from India, not correct, right? Similarly, for India submission, you need to have people in Delhi or people sitting somewhere who will take your file and do things, not correct. For India, everything is online, so you can sit wherever you are and do your application. Similarly, for US also, now even US is going into the online mode where irrespective of where you are located, you can do your application, FDA application, and you can get your approvals, right? Um, I think we spoke about the last point. If my company is ISO certified, I can ship to any part of the country. That's not correct. You need to look into the respective geographies, regulatory requirements, and ensure that you are adhering to those requirements. Sorry. Yeah. These were some of the questions that I received during the registration process, right? Some of them I would have answered during the discussion. Some of them I would just like to go through them and share my thoughts on the same, right? So steps to be followed, starting from product validation. In other words, when do we start these compliance process during prototype or product validated state? I think I mentioned that as early as possible, right? If you have the funds, if you can afford to start it during the prototype stage, please do that. Keep one thing in mind: this is not a overnight thing, right? It has its own time, it has its own process that you need to kind of set up. So it's like defining processes, implementing processes, having the evidences, going through the audit, and then getting certification, and then going towards your country level registrations and all, right? So as early as possible, right, is would be my answer, right? Now, what is the definition of as early is linked to the the financial capabilities that you guys might have, right? But I would strongly recommend to start as early as possible. Our company is involved in integrating with, I think this is the company I was talking to about, right? I was talking about that it depends on what is that you guys are claiming, right? Is it something that you guys are helping, enabling, in some sort of assistance to the doctors, or it is just a data managing system, right? So that is something I need to understand, get into the integrity for me to give you more details on, right? But I think I gave you some examples that hopefully should help you guys. How do you define a device? Does AI or digital technology which is procured from an international organization needs to be registered in India? Very good question. I think how do you define a device? I think the definition helps you, and then some examples also helps you, right? Does AI or digital technology? This is not only for AI or digital technology, for any product that you import, right? And if you intend to use the product as is, right, then you may have to apply for import license. But if you import the product and you are saying that, hey, the product is just a component of this final product, right? So I have imported an algorithm which sits in this medical device. Inside this is the algorithm, just like a component to this device, right? Then when you validate the entire device, right, the algorithm also gets validated. In this case, you may avoid separate registration of that AI algorithm, right? When do you need to register? When do you need to separately register a product is when you want to separately sell the product into the country, right? So for example, the ideally the company which is exporting to India should be the one ensuring that they have the import license for you to even integrate that algorithm into your device, right? But eventually the strategy that many a times even I have taken is I kind of declare that the algorithm or the software is just a component within the system, and then this system gets validated, and I eventually only register this particular system and not the algorithm separately, right? So that is one strategy you can think of, or you can consider, right? What are regulatory compliances for medical software in India and abroad? I think we spoke about that during the discussion. We are developing easy to use 6-lead ECG devices. Are there any regulatory approval needed for India? Yes, you are class B device. Look into that. There are specific ECG standards. You should look into that. ECG is one of the toughest device to crack in terms of product related requirements. So please make sure that you have your hands around your EC related activity. Digital stethoscope, I don't remember on top of my head whether there are specific requirements for digital stethoscope. I can look into it and can help you guys. But the short answer is yes, you need to take care of regulatory requirements in India. Can startup start on regulatory part before company formation and before functional prototype, or can any startup apply for regulatory procedure just after completing functional prototype, or can startup starts device production parallel apply for regulatory approval? See, for you to get regulatory approval, you need to have a company for sure, right? Because eventually your company will also be listed in any of the regulatory domains, right? So having a company is a must. Right now, at what stage you should apply for regulatory approval is up to you, right? I wouldn't say prototype is the right stage, right? You should register when you have completed all your testing, all your validation, all of that. Only then you should apply for, or only then you should go and do your registration process, right? What you can do in parallel while you're developing the product is to apply for something like an ISO 13485. For you to get your company ISO certified, you don't have to wait till the product is matured, right? The product can get matured over a period of time, but your company can still get an ISO 13485 registration. So I hope that helps. What kind of certification do we need to take for medical wearable device? So there is no like separate medical wearable device certification, right? Again, medical wearable device, if it's a wearable ECG, you need to consider ECG related activity. If it's a pulse oximeter, then you need to consider pulse oximeter related activity. If it's a combination of ECG and pulse oximeter, then you need to then you need to take into account both the requirements of pulse oximeter, ECG, and whatever might be required, right? But yes, things like biocompatibility will be something which will be important for you. Things like all these standards that I said. If it's an active medical wearable device, which I assume it to be, then the 60621 related activity will be important for you. If it is using battery, then battery related activity will be important for you, right? So all those things you will have to kind of be in hold of, right? um, is there a document available for studying such regulations? Yes. I think I have given a lot of references in the slide itself. CDSCO, in the CDSCO's portal itself, you have a lot of guidance document. There are a lot of notices, announcement that they make, and even the MDR 2017 is available that you can download and keep it for you. Similarly, for US FDA, things are all available for free. Similarly, for UMDR, things all the regulatory requirements, all the regulatory documents and guidance documents are available for free for you to look into and use them. Thank you so much, guys, for being patient and listening to me. Are there any questions that I can help with?
Yes, Varun, there are many actually. So to be precise, we have around 56 questions. We may or may not be able to address all of them, but we'll try and pick some of the important questions which may cover other questions. Answer to that question may cover other questions as well.
Sure.
So uh, most of the medical device needs a software as a software to function as device. What is the regulatory guidance in such cases? I think we have already addressed that. Uh, then there is one question. There was some efforts towards standardizing the standards across countries, especially for the CE mark. Can you please throw some light on that?
So CE mark is already standardized certification. So if you have a CE mark, no, you can sell in 29 countries. UK is out of that, right? UK has its own now regulatory framework. Apart from that, there was something called MDSAP. I don't know if you guys are aware of MDSAP. MDSAP was working on, doing the standardization between US, Canada, Europe, I think Brazil, and if I'm not wrong, it was Japan and Australia, right? That work that was happening between that work was going on. Canada adopted MDSAP completely, but rest of the countries were mostly just observing how it goes. As of today, there are just talk around it, but nothing concrete has happened. CE marking, moment your product gets CE marking, you can sell in I think 28 or 29 different countries such as France, Germany, and few other European countries, right? The only country which has got out of the CE mark regime is UK.
Okay. But we have another question from Vikas. Uh, does CDCO strictly follow EU MDR 2017-745 or has its own regulation? I think you have answered, but then
Yes,
if
please
you want to,
do not. That's not right. That's not right. No, not EU MDR is for EU MDR. India's is MDR 2017. That's it. There is no EU. There is no 745. MDR 2017. It is available on CDSCO's website. Please go there, download it. Yes, we have adopted certain things from EU MDR, but that doesn't mean that we follow EU MDR, right? We have so many things which are so different from EU MDR. One simple example is all this aspect of test license and all. It is not there in EU MDR, right? So MDR 2017.
Okay. Just meanwhile, if anybody would like to, ask question, please raise your hand. We will unmute you. We will just take few questions from the Q&A chat box, and then we will unmute you. So, one question for ISO certification, whom to approach? I think you have shared the links already. I think during from the webinar recording, you may find those links as well. Uh, is state-wise registration needed separately in addition to CDSU?
Yeah. So CDSU, again, in my slide, I would have said that, right? Class A, Class B is governed through state licensing authority. There is a central licensing authority which sits in Delhi, right? And then what they have done is they have representative in each state, right? Representative in each state are called state licensing authority. The state licensing authority helps you for all your Class A, Class B registration. The central licensing authority is looking into the Class C, Class D, just based on the risk associated, right? So once you get the manufacturing license, right, then there is nothing more that you need from CDSU for you to sell in India.
Varun, there is one question from Roshan. He's asking, I have a UTI diagnostic kit, mixture of chemical reagents, media formulation, and color developer. That's probably a kit will say yes or no. I think it's a class A device. Could you please confirm?
I cannot say that on top of my head. I need to look into the regulations. If what is your intent use, and based on that, I will have to look into it and then tell you whether it is Class A or Class B. I can point towards where you can see whether it is Class A or Class B. The place that you want to see is the MDR 2017, the rules under MDR 2017. You want to look into those for IVDR. Sorry, for IVD, because your product is in IVD. And then second is you want to see the predefined list of products for IVD. In that, if a product like yours is already mentioned, then please look into the classification of that, and you will get your classification.
Correct. I think it was another question on the similar line for biopsy instrument as well. But since it is a biopsy instrument coming in contact with the human body, could you indicate maybe possible classes?
I so I'll give you an example. Lancets. Are you guys aware of lancets? What are lancets? You use the lancet to prick your finger, to get blood for glucose testing and all. The lancets are class 2A, right? That kind of thing is a class 2A, right? So, what level of invasiveness is there, for how long it is invasive, all that is also important when you are doing your classification, right? Just because it comes in contact doesn't mean it is by default going to be a class C or a class D device, right? So my assumption, just by listening to what Pranita you just read or you just spoke, is it will be somewhere between class B and class C, right? I don't even think so. It'll be class C rather, something between class A and class B. But again, for me, I need to know their intended use and then go and do a little more study before I can confirm that. But my very initial guess would be class A, class B.
Okay, so another question from Kit is that can we use predicate device as a comparison? Can the regulatory pathway at CDSU be expedited for a Class B device if there is a predicate device available?
So what you can do, right? Good question. There is actually, that's a very good question for me to help you understand something else, right? So from the process perspective, no, you may not be able to bypass things. What I mean is, you still have to submit your documents online. They are still going to review it. They will still come for a audit, right? And after the audit and review, you will get your approval, right? But what will happen is, what may happen is your if you have a predicate, and I'm just going to give an example. Let's say ECG. ECGs are there for like years together, right? So if you have a predicate and if you do a very strong predicate analysis, right, you show a very good performance comparison and strong predicate analysis, then you may bypass the whole requirement of clinical study, right? That can happen. But what one cannot guarantee is that, hey, Will you get a shortcut approach? That probably is not something that anybody will be able to comment, right? There is no shortcut approach. You still have to submit your documents. It has to be reviewed. You need to answer those review comments. You need to undergo an audit, and only then you get your manufacturing license, right? I will tell you about one more thing, extending the question to a different scenario. There are certain other countries, like let's say Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, and few other countries in where if you have approvals from US, Europe, right, then your overall process for approval is reduced, right? If it takes 6 months, no, they will do it in 3 months. So that happens in certain other countries, right? India also considers your international approval. So if you have a product which already has a CE approval, which already has a FDA approval, and then you go to India, the process remains the same. But yes, they will consider those approvals to fast track your process. But the process remains the same. You still have to submit the document, go through manufacturing license, audit, blah, 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 before you can get your final certificate. But having these different certification will actually help you in expediting the process.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Varun. That's very helpful. So, another question from Devansh. If we have developed a universal optical attachment for all smartphones to capture images of ocular disease, do we need to get regulation on the optical attachment itself or include it with particular smartphone model?
Very good question. You need to get only for the optical attachment. The smartphone model, no, becomes like a spec, right? But if you say, hey, I am also going to supply the smartphone at this part of my kit as an accessory that you are claiming, then the smartphone regulation also falls under your picture. I would strongly recommend don't do that, because you will not be able to control the specification of smartphone, right? So be smart. Only define the specification that you need for a smartphone. Say that, hey, as far as you have this smartphone, no, this is the medical device that you can use with your smartphone and move forward in life, right? Your validation, your overall regulatory strategy, everything will become very simple. So that would be my strong recommendation, that try not to claim smartphone to be your product. Call it as a optional accessory that the opposite person, the user, needs to buy, and what they need to buy is what you just specify as part of your product spec.
Okay, great. I think that would help, really help
But
a
be
lot.
very clear on that. I will share one experience with you guys. Be very clear on that, right? I was working with a company. We used to provide them, we used to claim screens, okay, for them to do some image analysis. And we used to say, hey, buy any screen 14 inches and above. Okay. There goes a doctor, he buys a 24-inch high definition screen, right? And guess what? My software was not built for a 24-inch high definition screen. The entire software went for a toss. Now this doctor comes back to us and says, hey, you mentioned in your product spec anything about 13 inches. I got a 24-inch. It meets your spec. Why the hell is your software not working? I spent 1.5 lakhs. You better pay for it. Be very clear on your upper and lower limits when you define product specs. Please be very, very clear on this.
Yeah, I think guys, you should note this point. You should note this point and work around that. So another question, I think I would like you to answer this question, is that what is the difference between test license and manufacturing
I'll say,
license?
yeah, it's very important for you guys to know that, right? The whole uh, scope is very different. Test license are typically applied at the stage of development, right? When your product is something that you want to demo, you want to do studies, you want to do clinical investigations, you want to do, you want to just showcase the product, right? Either as clinical investigation or demos and things like that, is what is the definition of a test license, right? The approval of test license is also very simple. The kind of documents you need are also very simple. Having an ISO 13485 is not a mandate for test license, right? Test license is for anything non-commercial, right? Anything that you want to do non-commercial is where you can apply for test license. And nowadays, I actually recommend companies which are in early stage and they're doing clinical studies and all to apply for test license, so that they have a approved document from CDSCO. Test license come with a validity of 3 years, right? And during your audit, they will actually want you to have a proper traceability of all the devices which were made under the period of test license. You should have traceability of where those devices are and how are they currently being used, right? Manufacturing license on the other end is the license which you get for you to then go into full scale selling the device, right? So that's for commercial. This one is for non-commercial.
Thanks, Varun, for clarifying that. I think I'm going to unmute attendees here. There are many questions still in the chat box, but
Yeah.
let's unmute some of the attendees. So I would like to unmute Dr. Vijay Mehta. Uh, I have. Can you please unmute yourself and ask your question?
Hello.
Hi, Dr. Vijay.
Sir, I wanted to ask this. There will be, we are supposed to set up a separate setup for medical device, correct? And there will be audit before they grant us the manufacturing license. Does CDSOS define some criteria while we set up the manufacturing setup? Because we don't know what they are going to look into manufacturing setup.
ISO 13485. ISO 13485 is your
Yeah,
standard.
that has already been done. Manufacturing setup, final. We have received test license. Now we are going to apply for manufacturing license. We are in process of setting up the manufacturing setup. So when they come for audit, they may ask, do you have a clean room, or these are the
No, no, no,
couples?
no, 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 no. That's not how it works. It is
Yeah,
again product driven, right? So let's say
yeah.
I have a my own
Class B.
manufacturing.
We have a class B product.
Doesn't all that doesn't matter. Just hear me out.
Okay.
Uh, it is when I say product driven means if I'm into the ophthalmic segment, if I'm dealing with optics, right, then that's where I will decide whether I need a clean room or not, right? I know a company which did not have clean room but were still manufacturing ophthalmic devices, and then later on they got into clean room, right? So no CDSCO or even standard do not mandate ki what kind of setup you should have, right? That is purely up to you based on what product you are making, right? Yes, what will happen is when they come for an audit, right, and they will look into your facility and they will say, hey, have you taken proper precautions to ensure that you manufacture the device in the right way? That is something that they will look into, and as far as you can justify that with clean room or without clean room is completely up to you, right? So CDSCO or ISO or no other standard has said that your manufacturing area should be 300 by 300 and it should have A B C D E F G. That is not something that is purely
Okay.
dependent on you and your product.
Great. Thank you. I had one more question regarding CE. Means, do we have to take two CE marks, sir? One for Europe, one for UK?
No, no, no. CE mark is only for Europe. UK has
UK CE is different.
no, no, no. There is nothing called as UK CE. There is a CE mark. CE mark is always for Europe. There is nothing
Okay.
called as UK CE, India CE, China CE. कुछ भी नहीं है ऐसा. It's only for Europe. UK has a regulatory framework which is defined by MHRA, right? They call it. I forgot. What they call it is something I don't remember on top of my head,
Okay.
but it is governed by MHRA, right? MHRA is the governing body.
MHRA.
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 Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It's not called the UKC or something of that sort. It is
Okay.
just
Okay.
governed by. I would say it is just UK registration. That's all.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Pranita, you are on mute.
Oh, sorry. What if imported product, say batteries were certified in their home jurisdiction, but being used in the products in India? So these are imported batteries for the home, certified for home usage probably, and now they are being used in India. Do we still need to get CDSCO certification for this
Do you know
imported?
for batteries, you need to first ensure that your batteries are BIS certified? Batteries are supposed to have BIS certification. Please ensure that the batteries are BIS certified in India, right? After that, you will have to get into this thing. So first suggestion for anybody who's dealing with batteries and importing batteries is to please ensure that your batteries are BIS certified. Okay. Second is yes, your batteries along with the device. So batteries have to be IEC 62133 certified. IEC 62133 certified. Uh, when you have batteries in your system, your entire system along with the battery will be tested, will be subjected to different testing, right? And your batteries have to meet those requirements. And those requirements are what I was talking about before is IEC 661-1, right? I have seen things not working very well myself. So please make sure that first thing, if your so-called supplier is saying that they have all the certificate in the world, please go and independently evaluate whether they are registered with BIS for them to even ship in India, right? Second is if they are saying that they have certificate, please don't go on their statements. Actually ask for test reports, right? Tell them, give me your test report if you have certified and you have done testing. And then third would be that yes, you will have to still independently go ahead and do the testing as a system.
Thanks, Varun, for this. Uh, there is one question, I mean, two questions from the chat box. Maybe we can address them. Do we need approval from CDSO for clinical trials? I think in a way you have that.
No, there is. So test license is something you can use to. So if you see the definition of test license also in MDR 2017, right, it clearly says that it is something that you get approval for you to do clinical investigations and things like that. So that should take care of it.
Yeah, and there is one question from Dr. Ashok Kumar. Who can look after the QMS of my company? Educational or experience qualification, export qualification. I'm the founder and clinician by profession.
Who can look after the QMS in your company? QMS can be looked after by anyone. There is no but I will answer, then I will also put a clause. Okay, so any person can look after QMS, right? It is not you are a doctor or you are an engineer or you are some other qualification. That is not what QMS kind of dictates, right? That said, the EU MDR 2017 745, the CE marking guys, no, they have defined competence requirement for what they call it as what they call it as regulatory representative personnel in your company, right? There is a short form for that basically, that they have defined. So what should be their educational qualification and all of that, they have actually defined there before you can identify someone to be the regulatory representative within your organization for the European side of things. Okay, but when you talk about ISO and things like that, there is no such hard coded requirements that hey, only this person or this person with such and such qualification can manage your QMS.
Thanks. Varun, I think we'll take two questions from the attendees and probably we'll have to close it here.
Sure thing.
But before that, I mean, there is a lot of, I think attendees are asking for the contact details, your contact details. If you would like to put your email address in the chat box, or I can even put it if you want that.
Where do I put it? In the
Chat box. Yeah.
Okay.
So, so anyone who would like to, discuss anything further with Varun, they can reach out to him. He has already shared his phone number and the email address. So I think we'll probably, because of the time, we'll have to we can unmute only two people here. I think Mr. Amar Kamath, could you please go ahead and ask your question?
Yeah. Hi, Varun. Thanks a lot for your very nice talk. So I'm just to quickly say I'm the founder of a Dutch startup company. I'm based in the Netherlands, and I found it very interesting what you said. Just a quick question. Do you have any insights to share regarding the FDA's STEP and breakthrough devices programs? So the STEP is the safer technologies, and the breakthrough, of course, is the breakthrough devices.
So are you aware that for you to even get a breakthrough designation, there are criteria that you need to meet?
No, I'm not. We are quite early stage in the prototype development.
So I would actually show you that first. We can talk about this separately. I think I instead of telling you orally, I can actually show you things and that will be helpful for you. But FDA has defined which devices can even claim breakthrough application, right? Breakthrough designation. And if you only fit those gambit, you will get a breakthrough designation. If you don't, then you basically have to go through one of the other processes, which is 510K, blah, 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 right? And breakthrough designation typically follows with something like a de novo, right? Because you only, you get breakthrough when there is literally nothing else in the market which is doing what you guys are doing, right? So it follows with a de novo. But the typical step is you evaluate your device for definite for what is defined as breakthrough. You see whether it fits. You reach out to FDA. You do a pre-sub, reach out to FDA, give your justification. They will review it. They will approve it. Only once they approve it, you get your designation. Once that happens, you take the route forward towards either a de novo application or something else.
Great. And thanks a lot. I'll reach out to you for sure after this.
Thanks, Kamath, for joining us. I think we'll go ahead and unmute Mr. Sunil. Sunil, could you please ask your question? Can you unmute yourself?
So basically, we are procuring in our system, we are getting sensors from other manufacturers, let's say pulse oximeter or ECG or SpO2, and then we are reading that data, processing it and sending it to the doctor. So for this, does every sensor has to be certified by CDSCO or only the overall solution?
See, when you say sensor, are you talking about bare PCB?
Yeah, sensor means just which are taking the reading. Okay.
No. So I need to understand a little bit more. See, I have worked in a similar setup before, right? So when I say modules and when I say sensors, what we used to do is we used to get bare PCB, which had the ECG chip or the SpO2 chip embedded on it, and that PCB is basically what we would, put in our device, assemble the device, and we got the approval for the final device, right? After doing whatever we had to do. Now, when you say sensor, are you talking about the device itself, or are you talking about just the bare PCB?
Basically, those sensors are much more than just the chip, but what we are taking is just the raw reading from that.
Correct, but the sensor eventually becomes a device, right? How are you taking the reading? How are you getting the reading? Where is the sensor getting placed? Is it in a device form, or how is it?
Well, that is placed with the patient.
Okay.
That is connected to the patient wirelessly or through wire.
Okay, and these sensors are taking data, and then you are collecting the data and giving to the doctors. In this case, if the if the sensor does not have, and I see it to be a typical application is, if the sensor do not have any you know existing regulatory approvals, then you will have to get the regulatory approval, because the sensor is part of your product, right? It is not that you are already taking an existing device and putting it on a person and then collecting data from there, right? If the sensor is something which is part of your offering, then the sensor is a medical device, and the sensor needs to undergo all the different requirements.
But just because we
Sunil, can I just intervene here? I think,
Yeah, sure.
Sunil, I think if you want, we can arrange a meeting. You're associated with SINE. So if you want, we can arrange a meeting with Varun and we can take this offline as well. Please do let us know your interest and we can do that.
Sure, thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us here. Maybe if we can take last question. Rashmi, would you like to go ahead and ask your question?
Yeah, Rashmi, you are on mute. Rashmi, you're on mute if you are speaking.
Sorry. So I think we'll just go ahead and take one more question from Shruti. Shruti, could you please unmute yourself?
Yeah. Hi, good evening, Varun. Thank you so much for a very insightful talk. I have two questions. One, do I need CDSCO registration before I apply for CE marking?
Oh, CDSCO registration and CE marking has nothing to do with each other. It's if you
Cool.
want to sell your product in Europe, please go for CE marking. If you want to sell your product in India, please get CDSCO approval.
Okay, so no, I believe that the system, the process becomes faster if I have already got the CE marking.
Yes, that is true. That is true. That is true. That is true. It kind of builds in the confidence, right? So that will help you for sure.
Okay. My second question is,
But Rashmi, in today's world, to get a CE approval itself is a huge process. So
yeah,
just
I know
be
the
careful
money
of that.
involved is huge. Yeah,
Not money, the time also. The time also is very high.
Okay. My second quick question is, if I have a predicate device, right, and I'm trying to get this details, what is the classification? And I'm not able to, their website doesn't give, nor does it, no? I mean, where can I get this detail?
Don't remember, does it have it over there? So by the way, CDSU has started to put things in public domain. I don't know if you guys know this. You should know this.
Okay.
All companies which are getting approval are getting on CDSU's website, right? You see the company's name, product, license number, everything. So be very much aware that CDSU is going the route of doing things public now. For the classification specific thing, no, I don't remember whether they put the classification as well or not. So that's what I was thinking before I answered. If that's the case, then you will get it, very easily if that product has been registered. If not, then either you want to look into all these predefined devices, which is again you will get it from CDSCO's website, right? And from there you can kind of derive the classification.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you. God bless.
Sure.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thanks, Shruti, for joining us. I think we are already 5:37. Would you like to take couple of questions, or how do you want to Varun go about it? Generally, we close it around 5:30 or 5:35.
Yeah, I
Max.
can take one. I have a flight to catch, but I don't mind taking
Okay,
one question while I'm waiting for my cab to come. But let's
sure.
let's go ahead with another question.
Yeah. Okay. So, Rishabh, can you unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yes, thank you for you for granting the permission. So, hello Varun. My
Hey.
question is that since you told us that we have to take manufacturing license for software-based companies also. So, my question to you is that we are working upon a unified health interface supported app (UHI). So, does after completion of the app we have to apply for manufacturing license too?
I need to understand what does your app do. Is it only doing data management, data transfer, and all? Then my answer would incline towards no. If it is doing, more of, assistance and support, then my answer will tend towards yes. But I need to know more about your product before we can say yes or no.
Okay, fine, I've understood. Thank you.
So Rishabh, if you would like to know more, please write to Varun. We have already his email address is in the chat box. Please do take it from there. And I think we would like to close this session here. So first of all, I would like to thank Varun for so much insight and information in this area. And as much as how much we talk about this and how much webinars we do, I mean, this information, such information needs to be communicated to the innovators and startups. So thank you so much for doing that. And I would also like to thank all the participants here who joined, and they have been with us for 1.5 hour here. And they are continuously attending our sessions as well. So thank you so much for that. And thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dashrath, SINE IT team. And with this, we would like to close this session. If you have any questions or queries which are unanswered, please do write to us. I've already posted our email address, that is sign@sineitb.org in the chat box. Do let us know your queries. And with the Varun's permission, we will probably share the pitch deck with you, some of these slides. With you, because most of the attendees, they would like to have access to the slides, because there are a few links which are available there, through which they can they can have a lot of information for their
Yeah.
product or something. So I think with that, we will share the slide deck with you. The webinar recording is available on the SINE YouTube channel. You can also access that recording from there. And thank you all for joining, and have a great evening and have a great weekend. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.